All right, hey guys, what's going on? Needs more drums here, back in Accelerando for episode 8 of our 12-hour city. And today we are going to be building actually not one, but kind of two different ports. So as you can see now, we're just placing down the vanilla base game passenger terminal. And this one, I was excited. It had a bus station upgrade that I didn't even know was part of the asset, which was great because I did want to make some sort of a bus terminal around here so that in the future, and by the future I probably mean the next episode, actually we're going to start adding in some of our public transit lines. So adding our bus lines, our tram lines, get our train lines all sorted out. And actually one thing that I realized that I even forgot to do in this episode was get the actual line for the port, like the cruise ship line set up. I forget that in this game you actually have to do that. I feel like in City Skylines 1 the passenger ports just kind of worked by themselves, just regardless of and you didn't need to actually like make a dedicated line. But in this one it seems to indicate that you do need to make a dedicated line to and from the neighboring cities. So we'll get that set up in the next episode. No rush there. And then I wanted to add in some parking, of course, because, obviously a lot of people might stay here, if they're going on a cruise or something, they might need to leave their car somewhere for an extended period of time. So that's why I just opted to build that big parking structure. And I admit that the base game port for the passenger terminal, it's a bit big for kind of what we need in the city. But there is you can actually add a passenger terminal to the cargo port as well, as part of the Bridge and the Ports DLC. But I kind of forgot about that at this time, and plus I've never used that asset before, and I've in any of my cities I never really do too much with building ports, and especially like building like a passenger port. So I thought I'd give it a try, and it doesn't look that out of place. It's just a bigger thing, but I mean, who cares? I think it looks cool. So we're gonna roll with it, and we'll obviously come back and detail up this area in a future episode. But for now, I just wanted to get the asset down. I want to get this functioning, and we'll come back and zone some commercial and things around here. I imagine that this would be an area where there would be like a lot of commercial people would come to the city and they need to go like buy stuff, right? So a lot of commercial, maybe some even some like medium density residential might not be too bad around here. I know it might be more of a bustling area, so I'm a little bit the jury's still out on that, about whether or not I'll put that there, or maybe opt for some like office space and maybe even a bit of light industry around this area if we need it. But I do wish that there was a better way to place down these rocks, like without having to use anarchy or something. But we're confined to the vanilla game, and honestly, from a distance, it still kind of does the job, so I can't really complain. But yeah, now that we did kind of all that I wanted to do with the passenger terminal for now, I just wanted to spend like 15 minutes on it or so, and then move on to the cargo terminal, because this is the build that I kind of gave myself a challenging space to work with on purpose. So as you can see, this area here is where we're going to fit our cargo port, and I didn't really I could have made just a ton of artificial land, and I did make some, and I could have used like this area a bit more, but I wanted to make sure that the power plant still had a lot of space, and I wanted to make sure that like I just wanted to try to do something a bit different. Like I said, the scale of the city is not exactly the most massive, so I was trying to go for something a bit smaller in terms of like a cargo port. I wasn't going to do anything super huge. Just a couple of container spots, like intermodal spots, and then a little tank farm and a couple of bulk storage areas, I think is all we need. And rail access. I wanted to add rail access in too. But I was looking around for some inspiration, and I actually found a small port in I think it was Everett, Washington, or something kind of around there, something kind of around like the Seattle area, and it was sort of fit into like a similar space to this, just kind of along this like very narrow coastline. And it was one of those ones that was just it just kind of followed the coast. It was right along a road, and it was just small, but it worked. So I thought maybe we could try something like that, where we have this this port that sort of sits like parallel to this main road here and just as close enough to the shore. And we'll make a little bit of artificial land as we build out the areas where the actual like container cranes and stuff are going to be, the gantry cranes and all that. But overall, we didn't actually do too much in terms of like actual, like large scale land creation or expansion or whatever you want to call it. So it worked out kind of the way that I wanted it to, and I was pretty happy with the result. Actually, I did enjoy making this, and my port building skills, I will say, are not the greatest. I don't usually build these too much. I haven't built a ton of these, and especially with the new Bridges and Ports DLC where we can make it all modular, this is definitely a first for me. Like I said, I was used to even like the City Skylines one day, it's just kind of plopping down the old seaport and calling it a day. In this one, there's obviously a lot more, flexibility with the design and a lot more assets available to work with. So it makes it, more interesting and allows you to build kind of what you want, but also it makes it a bit more challenging because you kind of have to, know what's even included with all these assets. I would scroll over some and be like, oh, I didn't even know they had that in there, So, like for example, you'll see pretty soon here, I actually forget to even put down a warehouse, and so I have to try to find a way to fit a warehouse in here. And then funny enough, I actually end up towards the end of the episode, I actually end up forgetting that I wanted to add a rail connection. So I didn't even have, I was about to say, oh yeah, we're done with the port. I was going to go do some detailing. And then I thought, oh man, we don't have any kind of cargo train terminal or anything around here. So I had to kind of work that in. And I tried to do a few different things. I thought about, even expanding the port area kind of on the other side of the avenue and having the avenue like become raised or like elevated, and just kind of cross over it. But I thought that might be a little bit too much work for the size of the facility that is needed down here in the space. So I opted to just, again, stick with something small for now. We can always expand in the future. That's actually kind of why I kept that land open on the other side of that avenue. If we do ever feel the need to expand the port, we could maybe replace that avenue, like I said, with like an elevated highway or something, and then kind of drag the port through there and have it take up that space behind the power plant there. Because as much as like there's still an industrial demand, we don't actually need a ton of jobs. I think our unemployment rate was like, if I remember, it was like really, really low. It was like 1 point something percent, which is ridiculous. Honestly, I feel like a healthy range is, maybe less than 5. You want to shoot for maybe around 5. But yeah, that's the unemployment rate in the city is just outstandingly low, which is good. It means that, our businesses are taking full advantage, of everybody that's able to work, everybody has a job. But also it means that there are maybe there are too many places and not enough people that could work there. So, we want to bring a little bit more, a few more residents maybe in here. So I know there are still a couple of residential neighborhoods that we also need to work on and fill in. I know right by the hospital, there's still one that we need to fill in. And I'm thinking that'll be more like, a medium density development anyway. So it'll definitely attract quite a few more people to the city, which is good. But I wanted to get this out of the way first, just because I know that this is something, this is a very, very important part of any, region or city's infrastructure, is having, access to freight and to cargo and, intermodal facilities. So this will check that box for us, at least for now. And then eventually down the line, maybe we'll add like an airport in if we can. Maybe that'll be a fun episode, like after the fact. I talk about all the time, like doing all these builds, after the initial 12 hours. But there's just some stuff that I feel like we're not going to be able to get to, and I just want to see at the end of the day, just like what we can actually accomplish in this time. And we probably could like build an airport and all that, and add that to the city and everything. But I just feel like that is a quite an ambitious build for to fit into the city. But hey, we'll see. I actually currently I have 2 episodes scheduled for, like, the next 2 episodes I have scheduled for public transit, but I almost feel like that might be a little bit generous. And if it so happens that we get done with most of the public transit, if not all, in just 1 episode, then yeah, maybe we could spend, another episode either one expanding the city and filling in some of those empty residential areas that I intend to build, and other areas of the city like by the port, the passenger port, where we could fill in like the commercial and everything. Like I mentioned, that residential neighborhood by the university. There are places that we could work, and we can improve for sure. But also, we could do something a bit more ambitious too, like an airport build, like I said. So I'll get the next episode recorded, and then I'll depending on where we're at the end of that one, maybe I'll put up a poll and have you guys weigh in on maybe what we could focus on next. But again, this is all hypothetical. This is all assuming that I actually get everything done and get ahead of schedule in the next episode. So we'll see here. We'll see, because public transit, I know this isn't a big city, but it does take some time. And part of the reason that I wanted to wait before I set up any public transit is because I wanted to get the city built out to a point where I knew where the destinations were going to be. So, I want to know where the workplaces are. I want to know where there's going to be, the need to just get like a lot of people around, like the downtown. We have a lot of the financial district. We have the art museum, kind of those major destinations. We have the university. And even if some of the neighborhoods aren't necessarily filled in yet, I kind of know like what's going to be there. So it makes it a bit easier to kind of plan out like the transit routes and stuff. And then we can kind of work around those too. It should be kind of fun, like a nice little added challenge for us. But yeah, here again, just doing some very, very light detailing on the port. I haven't really been talking about what I've been doing. But yeah, again, you can see it's not the biggest. This is pretty much it. And then we're going to add in the rail facility at the very, very end, because like I said, I almost forgot about it. But yeah, I didn't really want to do much. We have the tank farm there. We have a couple of container yards. Here's where I'm struggling to figure out where to put this warehouse. And so I thought, maybe we can fit it, I don't know, over there. And then I thought maybe we don't need it. Maybe we can just fill this with some container yards. But then I looked and I'm like, no, every port does need at least some warehouse space. So even if this is a small one, the warehouses are even the small warehouse in the port asset, or the Bridges and Ports DLC, is quite large. I wish they had one that was maybe a bit smaller. But I guess, that's kind of what the purpose of these industrial zones are. Is, I wanted to zone some industry in there to kind of fill some of the gaps. And I think it just looks good. It looks like a busier area. And then one thing too that I wanted to consider is, you'll see me plop down a couple of these, is just parking lots. Again, this isn't a big port, but presumably, people are going to be driving here, and we do need somewhere for the employees to park. So I put down a couple of parking lots, nothing massive, but just enough to say that we've addressed at least some of that need, right? So yeah, so far I'm liking how this is coming together, aside from me not knowing where to put this warehouse. But yeah, I didn't know, again, like that you needed to make, I keep forgetting that you need to set up dedicated lines, like dedicated shipping lines for the trains in this game and for the ships. So I needed to put down those cranes and then actually make a cargo line connecting to each one of those cranes, which is kind of cool, because then you can kind of plan it out to where, like, each connection can get assigned its own crane, so you don't have like a big queue of ships waiting to get loaded and unloaded. But it is a bit challenging, because depending on how many connections you want, you need to make sure that you have enough cranes. Luckily, in this scenario, since our port is so small, and I actually think the way that this part of the map is set up, I believe there might only be, I think there's a couple of connections that we can make, and we could probably make more if we really want to, but just like right now, the way that the map was set up, I think we end up having like just 2 out of the 3 in use, and then we can maybe see if we can work the third one in somehow, but we're not going to worry about that today. But yeah, just here again, did a little bit of rearranging to fit that warehouse in there. And I didn't want to make another connection for the port, to like that water treatment area or anything. I would need to add a smaller gate, which I'm still debating of doing, but I just don't think it's entirely necessary. This port is like so small. I don't think we really need a second exit. Although from a functionality standpoint, it does help to have more than one entrance and exit, I'm sure. But maybe we could think about that a little bit more and just add one in at a later time if we feel like we need to. But yeah, so again, fill in some of the gaps with a bit of industry, just to bring some more jobs to the area. to fill in the space. You know, you typically see like different buildings around these port areas, so it just makes sense to have a few different buildings kind of plopped around. But yeah, there's one of the parking lots I was talking about, making sure that we have just a bit of parking infrastructure around here. Yeah, just you know, again, this is all relative to scale. You know, this isn't a huge port, and honestly, when you zoom out and when you look at this compared to some of the other things in the city, I think it's scaled quite nicely. And I still think that passenger port was a bit large for what we need, but it'll be good. It'll be functional. It'll be a cool destination. You know, to be honest, I've seen some pretty big passenger terminals at some in some not so big cities. So we'll take what we can get. But yeah, and then here I wanted to have its own dedicated power terminal or power substation. I wanted the port to have its own dedicated substation because, you know, there is going to be a lot going on here, and it is going to be drawing a lot of power. And I just didn't really know. I didn't want to like run like a low voltage connection just like under the road or on the road or something. I thought it needed like a bigger power connection. So I went for the high voltage lines to connect to its own dedicated substation. And honestly, I like the way it looks. We had that small transformer station that was added to the game a bit later. So it's really cool to be able to use something like that. I kind of forgot that was in there. And then I saw it and I said, you know what, that's going to be perfect for what we need. We just have this whole little power station just for the port. It just looks excellent. And so just doing a little bit of landscaping now, creating a landscape barrier against the road there. Again, taking inspiration from that port that I saw in Washington. And I'll probably put a screenshot of it up if I haven't already. But it was just cool. Yeah, there was just a little landscape barrier, just kind of separated it from the road. Just worked out really well with the area that we're trying to build in. So quite happy with it. Filling in some trees here again. You know, I didn't originally have any use for that area, but then I realized again that I didn't build the rail yard. Oh my gosh, it was just so funny. I was so excited. I was like, yeah, we got everything done. I had a little bit of time to, you know, add in some extra details and such. And then I looked and I was like, oh, I forgot to add the train. And so I was back to the drawing board, had to rearrange some stuff, figure out where the roads were going to go. It was just a mess. But we got it done. We ended up getting it done. Not the most beautiful build in the world, but you know, that's kind of the theme of this whole series, isn't it? You know, just kind of getting things built, making sure they function, and then just kind of, you know, saying, oh yeah, that'll work. That's good enough for now. Let's move on and just make something more complete. And honestly, I have really enjoyed building this way. It's been so fun, and it's been a challenge. And it's cool though, because, you know, a lot of times, like I said, I just get so bogged down with building like, you know, one area, and then I feel like my city just never gets complete, and I've spent so much time in it, and you just struggle to find motivation sometimes. But when you jump in here and you know, I'm forced to complete a task, and I say, yeah, I got to build this one area, and I have an hour to do it. It makes you approach the game differently. It makes you, you know, kind of plan out think about the bigger picture, plan out what you need to plan out, but then just kind of, you know, still be creative. But you have to, you know, keep it all in perspective, right? It's that added perspective of like, how big is the city going to be? You know, it's got to have a bit of an end. You got to give it like some borders. You know, that's like when we did the farmland, we kind of deliberately created outskirts for the city. And even now, like, look at this, it really isn't that big of a city at all. But I want it to feel complete at the end of the day. I want it to have a little bit of everything, you know, industry, a port, a power plant, farmland, you know, just a little bit of everything. And I think so far, I feel like I've been achieving that, and it's been cool. And, you know, I feel like at the same time, you know, you want to have some kind of unique features. And, you know, for example, we have some unique buildings in the downtown. We have that art museum, that modern art museum. So it's like, it definitely has some characteristics that's going to make this build kind of a cool one, you know, and a unique one for me. So always excited to do stuff like this. And again, you know, feel free to always suggest any kind of challenge, you know, that you might want to see me undertake. Feel free to leave a comment, and I'd be happy to take, you know, anything into consideration about like a cool challenge or a cool build that you think would be interesting to see. Because I always like doing different stuff like this, you know, especially playing vanilla. I am debating about doing a build that would be lightly modded in the future, but, you know, since mods are getting a bit more stable now. But again, that's all, you know, to be determined. And we'll see kind of what happens with the game here in the next couple months as a Q1 2026 is coming around with the the new developers and such. But yeah, so here's where I finally realized that I was like, oh man, I forgot to put the train. Had to create a little bit of land to make this fit, and it's a little bit of a challenge with that shipping lane in the way. And then we have this map tile, so we're actually going to go ahead and buy this map tile in a minute so I can actually get the track out of there. And I figure we'll need that map tile anyway in the future. It's like, it's all water, it doesn't cost that much. I said whatever. But I was trying to find a way. Yeah, there we go, just bought that. But I was trying to find a way here to make the key wall get right up against the train terminal, but it just wasn't working. I couldn't. It kept getting like elevated like this, and I just like could never get it to work. And I tried to mess with the different snapping settings and everything, and it just wouldn't work. So at the end of the day, we actually end up just expanding this out a little bit more, and then we'll try to make the key wall, a little bit of ways away from the cargo terminal, but then we'll fill in the space between the key and the train terminal with some additional just like containers and like I think a couple of tanks and things like that. So nothing extravagant, but just a way to fill the space and to make this have a little bit more of it gives a little bit more of a important presence too. I kind of actually am glad that I was able to add this train line in this whole like cargo terminal, because it makes the port just a little bit more significant to a size that I think better reflects the city a bit. So definitely can't complain about this. I did enjoy the way that it turned out. Like I said, it's cool to see relative to the scale of the rest of the build, how this kind of fits in. And I think that I, or at least I would like to think that I did a pretty okay job of getting this to reflect the scale of the city and the perspective that we're trying to get here. So just added this little kind of roundabout thing around the tank farm there to give trucks a chance to turn around once they reach the end of this road. I couldn't find a way to fit another connection in there with the shipping lane in the way. I wanted to get a road like kind of along this little coast here, but didn't really work, and we just had to work what we got. So no worries there. Ship's a little bit close to the shore. I might have to mess with that lane a little bit, but I'll remember that for the next episode when we got some time. But speaking of time, we are just about out of it. And thank you guys so much again for watching. I hope that you are enjoying the build, and I've been really enjoying making it. So hope you guys all have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode once we start getting some of our public transit set up. So see you guys in the next one. Have a good week, and I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.